Okay, so we got two vectors here. So this is one vector and this is another vector. And we want to find the angle between vectors. Okay, so if you're watching this video, obviously you're watching it right now. If you're listening to me, you clearly are interested in finding the angle between vectors because if you don't know what vectors are and you don't even know why you're watching this video, then I would suggest finding something more entertaining on YouTube to watch because obviously this is a very specific type of math question, but probably most of you are studying this and saying, no, I'm here for a specific reason. I need to understand how to find the angle between two vectors. So this is probably along the lines of someone taking like a pre-calculus course or kind of advanced mathematics or physics or something like that because vectors are everywhere in math and science are tremendously important. And what we're going to be talking about in this particular video to find the angle between two vectors is critical as well. We're going to be talking about something called the dot product. So maybe this is a quick refresher about that, but I'm going to get into exactly what we need to do here step by step. Again, just a quick review though, for those of you that don't really know what a vector is, you're just like, no, I just want to learn something new. A vector is well, we kind of represent vectors by arrows. Think of it as having a magnitude and a direction. So let's say an airplane is going at this, let's say for 0 degrees at 800 miles per hour. Okay, so there's a scalar component and a directional component. This together combined as one is a vector. Okay, so if you're just like saying, I'm just interested in vectors, well, this is a vector. Okay, so you can see we have this arrow is representing this particular vector v, and this arrow is representing this particular vector u. And what we want to do is find the angle between those two vectors. So if you want to, again, just learn something new, let's just give you a basic definition of vectors. But we're going to walk into the steps here just in one moment. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher, and over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Of course, I'll let you be the judge of that. If you're interested, you can check out my math help program by following the link in the description of this video. But basically, I have 100 plus different math courses ranging from pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and finally now pre-calculus. If you are studying this in detail, or maybe you are in a pre-calculus course, I'm going to leave a direct link to my pre-calculus course in the description of this video as well. I really get into some heavy-duty math. I love teaching all levels of math, but advanced math is pretty fun. But beyond that, I also do a lot with test preparation. So if you're studying for the GED, HiSET, TASK, maybe the ACT, SAT, GRE, GMAT, ASVAB, AccuPlacer, ALEX exam, teacher certification exam, nursing school entrance exam, and many, many other type of exams, guess what they all have in common? They have math on those exams, so someone thinks math's pretty important. And if you don't do well in the math section, you don't do well on these exams. So I can help you prepare. Just go to my site, check out my full course catalog. If I don't have your exam, drop me a line in my contact form and I'll help you out the best I can. I also do a lot with homeschoolers. I've been working with homeschoolers for 15 plus years. I have a great homeschool learning program, so you can check that out. And then obviously help those of you that are just having a tough time in your current math courses. Now, if you're truly serious about wanting to improve in math and learn this stuff, well, you got to take great math notes. You got to be serious about your note taking. So, I've been teaching math for decades, and there's one thing I can point to with consistency over all those years, and that is note taking. Okay, so those students who take great math notes almost always do very well, and the reverse is true. Okay, those students who are, trying to kind of get away with, it's like they got one foot in the class and then they got one foot outside the class. So let's just kind of let's draw a little stick figure right here. So this foot is like listening to the teacher, and this foot is on the cell phone or talking to their other friends and whatnot. And most people think they can kind of like multitask when it comes to learning mathematics or learning anything. Guess what? Unfortunately, your focus doesn't work that way. Focus is you got to pick one thing to focus on. If you're trying to focus on two things at one time, it's not going to work. And this is going to result in poor grades, confusion, and frustration. So if you're having a tough time in math, look at your notes because that's a representation of how well you're focusing. Okay, so focus is the key. But as you improve in your notes, you can use my notes to study from. Those would include pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and trigonometry. I don't yet have notes for pre-calculus. I'm working on those that would include vectors. But if you take my pre-calculus course, and I have different options for my membership, you'll have all the notes there that you need. All right, so let's get into this. Let's find the angle between two vectors, and let's take a look at the problem a little more clearly here. And I'm going to give you a hint. So if you want to turn this into a little pop quiz for yourself, you're like, yeah, I know how to do this. I just need to kind of brush up on some things, and that's pretty cool. We could turn this into a little quiz, and I'll give you a hint. What you need to know is the dot product. Okay, so when you study vectors, there's a lot of different things you study. We find the components of vectors. We find the magnitude of vectors. You should have a basic understanding of this at this level. Okay, so if you're learning vectors right now and you're at the point where you're studying the dot product, well, previously to that, you should have learned how to find the magnitude of vectors and, like I said, the various vector components, and you should be pretty familiar with vectors. Now, if you're totally lost, then you probably want to go back and review some of that other stuff before you get to this. But yeah, stick around. You're already this far into the video. But we need to learn something called the dot product. Now, the dot product is tremendously important and valuable when it comes to vectors. Now, here we have two vectors. We have vector v and we have vector u. So we can find this thing called the dot product. Now, it's not like how you think, like, multiplying in, let's say, algebra, binomial times a binomial. That's not the case. So when you do the dot product, we're going to end up with just some real number. Okay, it's not going to really. Sometimes this is referred to as a scalar product. Just going to get some number. You're like, okay, I found the dot product. What do I do with it? Well, not really much. It's kind of like finding the determinant of a matrix. It's just a number. However, we need to know how to find the dot product in order to solve this particular problem. So there's an excellent formula, very cool formula that uses the dot product that it can allow us to find the angle between these two vectors. And kind of seeing this problem graphically. So if you think you could do this problem, go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and do it. Now I am going to show you the formula here. So if you forgot the formula, let's go ahead and move forward. And I'll give you the formula now. Here, let's just do this so you don't see all my work. So here's the formula, okay? So the cosine of this angle is equal to the dot product of those two vectors over the product of the magnitude. Okay, that's the denominator. So you need to know how to find the magnitude of these two vectors. And that's just basically like applying the Pythagorean theorem to this stuff. It's pretty easy. So kind of like not a number crunching stuff going on here. So if you want to go ahead and try this problem, here's the formula. There you go. Have fun. But for those of you that are like, no, I don't know how to do this, let's continue to plow forward. All right, so this is what we need to do, okay? We need to find the dot product. So obviously we're going to need to know how to find the dot product. So this is stuff that's not that hard, okay? So just stick around, and then we're going to have to find the magnitude of this vector here, u, and the magnitude of this vector v, multiply them together, do a bunch of simplification, get a number, and then we can find the our cosine to find that angle, okay? All right, so let's get to it. And here is my work. So let's look at these two vectors. So these vectors currently are what we call an I and J form. It's a pretty typical, pretty common way to represent vectors, but it's not the only way. So we have 2i plus 5j, and then we have 4i minus 3j, but I'm kind of wanted to put in a little extra bonus. I say, no, let's go ahead and use these bracket notation for these vectors. So 2, 5, we can represent, you almost kind of think of it as an xy coordinate, but we can represent that vector using this notation. It's the same vector, just different notation. So it's this bracket 2, 5, and then this vector here, 4i minus 3j, I can represent as 4, comma, negative 3. Okay, so typically, you're going to be learning both. You need to know both forms, and it all depends on your teacher or what you're doing. You might be more familiar with one form or another, but you should be able to work with both forms, and they're equivalent. It's not that difficult to translate one into the other. But let's go ahead and continue on and set up this formula. Okay. All right. So now here's our vectors. All right. So here's the formula. So cosine theta That's the angle between the two vectors is going to be equal to the dot product, okay, of this one vector, v, okay, dot, we could just say, and that's how you say it, v dot u, okay, that's going to be the dot product. So we're just going to write this up over the magnitude of this vector, okay, so it looks like these little absolute value signs, but that's just finding the magnitude, and then here is going to be the magnitude of that other vector. So you always want to just set up all your work before you start getting into the number crunching. Okay, now those of you that are not familiar with how to find the dot product, it's not that difficult at all. So let's go ahead and talk about the numerator up here. So we're going to find the dot product. And what am I doing? So I got 2 times 4. So how did I do that? Well, I'm taking this component right here and I'm multiplying it by that. 2 times 4, then I'm going to add this component times this. It's almost kind of like the distributive property, 5 plus negative 3. Just follow that little formula. This is how you find the dot product every time. It's super easy, okay? So you could just see what I did, and we're going to add all this up. This is going to be 8 plus negative 15. Of course, that's going to be negative 7, but we'll get to that in a second. All right, so that is the dot product. So if you never knew how to find the dot product, this is how you find it. Not that difficult. All right, so now what we want to do is find the magnitudes of these vectors down here, and then we'll put all this together. All right, so cosine theta, okay, the cosine of the angle between these two vectors. Here we have the dot product, and now we need to find the magnitude. So how do we find the magnitude of this vector 2, 5? Well, you do this, okay? It's kind of like the Pythagorean theorem, where this is like your A and B sides, and it's basically it's the magnitude, it's the distance of that arrow. So it's going to be positive, all right? So it's going to be here, it's going to be 2 squared. All you do is just square this, and you're going to add it to the square of that, and you take the square root. Okay, so again, if you are studying vectors, you need to know how to find the magnitude of vectors. Hopefully most of you are like, yep, I know how to do this. So this is 2 squared plus 5 squared. Of course, that's going to be the square root of 29. And now let's find the magnitude of this other vector. That's going to be the square root of 4 squared plus negative 3 squared. Just simple basic number crunching here. That's the square root of 25, and that's going to be 5. Again, we're talking about the absolute value, the positive distance of our vector. Okay, that's the magnitude. That's 5. Okay, so now we have this. That's going to be negative 7. We know what this is. That's going to be the square root of 29. And we have this. That's going to be 5. So we're just going to go ahead and now substitute all these things in and start to simplify this. Okay. All right, so cosine of the angle between those two vectors, here's our dot product. That all adds up to negative 7. And then here is our magnitudes of our vectors, and that's 5 times the square root of 29. Again, we just calculated that, 5 times the square root of 29. And so now let's go ahead and keep walking this forward. All right, so the cosine of that angle, remember we just simplified it as negative 7 over 5 times the square root of 29. We get our handy-dandy calculator out, and we simplify this into a decimal. That's approximately negative 0.26. All right, so this is where you wanted to get this problem to. You got the cosine of this angle is approximately negative 0.26. So of course you need to know some basic trigonometry. Okay, so we need our calculator obviously as well. So we're going to use the arc cosine function. We're saying, okay, what angle has a cosine of negative 0.26? We plug this in to our calculator. Make sure you're in degree mode. Okay, of course you can get this answer as a radian, but if you're not told one way or another, always just leave your calculator in degree mode. That's its default mode, and you get approximately 105 degrees. And that is it. So we can see this graphically down here. Okay, here's our vectors. Here's the angle between the two vectors. It's about 105 degrees. Now, if you got this right, well, then I must give you a nice, great 1984. Well, not 1884. Maybe they had mohawks in 1884. I don't know. But I definitely know they had mohawks in 1984 with extra hairspray. That's awesome. Giving A plus a 105%. Okay, because that was excellent, right? You showed, yourself, and, if I was grading, you're like, yeah, you understand the dot product, and you understand how to use this formula. This is a very, very important application of the dot product. Okay, so it's going to be used everywhere in my course, and I'll just stress this now because probably most of you already know this, or maybe you might know this. You might be just taking vectors as part of like a pre-calculus course or some other math course. You're like, well, I just got to learn this and then move on. Listen, if you continue on with mathematics or especially science, physics and stuff, vectors are critical. They're everywhere. They're so, so important. And the dot product is everywhere as well. So don't minimize the importance of, learning this stuff. Okay. Everything is important. But if you forgot how to do this, you're like, okay, now I remember. Well, then that's the whole point of the videos, just to help you out. Either relearn this or learn this for the first time. But either way, if in some small way you enjoyed the video, please consider smashing that like button. That helps me out. And if you're new to my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. Been on YouTube for 10 plus years, have 1,000 plus math videos, basic to advanced math. Of course, this is a little bit more on the advanced side, but it's all relative. You know, to where you're at in your mathematics journey. Okay, so if you need help with vectors or this level of mathematics, I certainly would encourage you, and you like my teaching style, certainly encourage you to check out my pre-calculus course. Again, I'm going to leave the direct link to my pre-calculus course in the description of this video, but go get help. Okay, at this level, if you're already at this level of math, obviously that means that you probably already have pretty good study habits. There's just no way you could survive at this level of math with you know, trying to not take notes and not pay attention. You'll end up failing pretty quickly. Okay, so probably most of you are doing the right things, but double down, talk to your teacher. And you need to work hard as well because there's a lot going on at this level. But I am certainly there to try to help you out the best I can. But my best math help will be within my math help program. All right, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics journeys. Thank you for your time and have a great day.